Kevin on Friday, I think it was. And man, I tell you what, it's wonderful the way God works. He called, first of all, to ask if the money was to go into the mission or go to him. And the way we sent it to him, it was to go to him. We told him he didn't get a Christmas gift, and we didn't want it. The mission, in his mission, we wanted him to have it. And he said, well, I just wanted to check. Isn't that something? It's in him, in his name and everything, and yet he calls to make sure. And he said, you know what? He said, you want to know how God works? He said, our hot water heater went out. And he said, we wondered what we was going to do. And he said, that check come. And so we just praise the Lord. God bless him. When he got off the phone, before he got off the phone, he said, I want to have prayer with you. And that was just wonderful. This to be able to talk to him. And I appreciate him so very, very much. And he said to tell all the church, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so this is not all the church, but I want you all to know that those that gave, he surely appreciated it. And God's working in so many ways. Take your Bibles tonight. I told Kyra on the way out, I said, oh, I hope we don't have no visitors tonight. Pastor don't usually say that, but you'll know what I'm talking about when we get into this. I want to cover this chapter, and I think it's a very important chapter, and I call it the shameful life of Judah. And to be honest with you, very little help that I get from any concordance that I've read, and I'm surprised how many skip over this almost altogether. And I want to tell you, as we get into this, we leave the life of Judah, or not Judah, but Joseph, for this one chapter. And then from chapter 39 on to the end of the book, it's going to be all about Joseph. But we leave Jacob also. Jacob, we will not see him anymore until the end of the book. And right before we get to the end, chapter 49, I think he comes in back in 48, 49, and 50, and then we'll be through with all of these. But J. Vernon McGee, I looked at his book, and here's what he said. He says about this chapter that it's about as necessary as the fifth leg on a cow. I thought that was humorous. I disagree with him. I disagree wholeheartedly with him on that. McGee goes on to say that after you have read the story, he calls it a story, it's an actual happening, you may wish that it had been left out of the Bible. Again, I certainly don't wish that. This is a very, very important chapter. That's the reason why I must cover it. And even though some like to hedge away from it, I read Wiersbe. Wiersbe said very little about it. And some of the things he said about it, I sure wouldn't want to bring out to a mixed congregation. But the events of this chapter seem to interrupt the life of Joseph. And right here, I want to point out some things that I've done some studying on this myself, and I think it's important that we see this. Joseph was 17 years old. You go back to chapter 37, verse 2 says, these are the generations of Jacob, Joseph being 17 years old. That's first verse of chapter 17. He was 17 years old. Now, this is important, I think. He was sold into slavery, and when he took the throne with the Pharaoh, he was 30 years old. We know that to be a fact. So, he's 17 when he leaves his brothers, and he takes the throne at 30. How many years have come and gone now? From 30, how many? 17 years. Very good, Randy. You're all. This is important. I want you to see this. No, 13. It'd be 13 years. 13 years, not 17. 13 years. When you add, they had 7 good years when he come in. First thing he done after the dream, the king's dream, he told the king that there'd be 7 years of good crop for the crops. They were going to be good, lean years. And so now we add that to the 17. How many you got now? The 7 good years. Well, you're getting ahead of me, Randy. It'd be 30 years, but I want you to see this. I mean, he's 30 years old when he goes to the throne. He'll be 37 years old then. He'll be 37 after 7 years of. Okay, that's what you said. Okay, I'm sorry. Then there was a prediction that there'd be how many years of famine? When there wouldn't go be no crops. 7 more years. Well, how long was it before the brothers came for food? We're getting way ahead of ourselves now, but this is important. I want you to see it. It was 2 years into the famine. So now we have how much? 39 years. Now, but I want you to see this. Between the time that he leaves his brothers until the time he's reconciled with his brothers till they come down, there'll be 22 years that pass by. So what we find in chapter 38 over to chapter 41, we're dealing with 22 years. And this is important. Judah was not married when they sold Joseph into slavery. So the first thing we read in chapter 38, it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adulamite whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter. She wasn't the daughter of Hira now, but he saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. And he took her and went into her. Now, I come to this question, why is this all recorded, or why is this event so important? We have it in our Bible. I think it's more than the 5th leg on a cow. One of the major purposes for the book of Genesis is to record the origin of the family that we're following here. And the family that we're following is going to be the family of Jacob. Now we've gone from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, and Jacob is the one that has the 12 sons that's going to make up the children of Israel. There were 76 members of the family that's going to go down into Egypt in chapter 41, and 400 years later, they go down as a family. 400 years later, they come out as a nation with over 2 million people. Moses led that many people out of this country, of Egypt. So what's God doing? I'll show you before we get to the end of this book, but God is up to something here, and he's preserving this family, and he wants to preserve them in the right way. Since the tribe of Judah is the royal tribe, it is important not to lose sight of him. He's very important in this whole array of things. Now, Judah does not know he's in the royal line yet, because I tried to find this. I went through, and he doesn't know this until we get to the end of the book and find out when Jacob tells us that he's going to be of the royal lineage, or the tribe from which the Lord Jesus is going to come from. Now, since he is the tribe, though, We mustn't lose sight of it. We must keep him in our sights. Thus, we have the record in this chapter of Judah and how Satan was going to try to destroy and thwart the program or the will of God here, God's program. Remember what God said to Abraham. I want you to go back with me to chapter 18 and look with me at verse 18. And we covered this, and I want to bring it back to your mind now. In chapter 18, verse 18, listen to let me read 17, 18, and 19. And the Lord said, in verse 17, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation? God's telling Abraham what's to be. Now, he goes on to say, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed of him. Has that happened? If you don't understand this, let me just explain it to you. The reason why we are here today is because of the Jewish people. Were it not for Israel, I don't think we would have, the way that we have harbored and cared for the Jew, I don't think we could have won the Second World War. There's no way, reasonably thinking, that America could have won that war or been on the winning side there. But look what we've done for the Jews. We've always harbored them. And when America turns her back on Israel, and it wouldn't surprise me that we don't do that if we don't get some new leadership, that this nation is going to be history. It may be anyway, because the Jews are moving out. For I know, verse 19, him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken to him. God said, I promise you that Abraham is going to be blessed. Well, we know that he did bless through Abraham. He's blessed him, made him a very wealthy person. And then Isaac, his son, came on. And Isaac done things right too. He made sure that his son went down into Haran to get a wife and to keep the seed pure and clean. But something happened with Jacob that we mustn't overlook. Jacob didn't keep this. As a matter of fact, it looks like Jacob was doing everything to discredit what God promised to Abraham. He went down into Haran. He spent 20 years there doing what? Trying to get out, I guess. But God brought him out with a large family, with blessing on top of blessing. But the thing that we miss with Jacob is he left God out of the program, out of the picture. There wasn't nothing said about Jacob serving the Lord, worshiping God, praying. You don't even hear of him praying down there. And then he goes back and he stops short of getting back to where he was supposed to be. He gets back into, help me. Pardon? No, he's not. Before he gets there, he spends probably 10 or years catch him. There he, and again, look what he's doing. His family's getting him in trouble. But what's he doing there? He's, I believe, running from Esau, his brother, and he's surely not living the way that he should. And the point that I'm trying to make here is for these many years now, 27 years of his life at least, or maybe 30 years of his life, he has squandered time when he should have been back in his homeland much sooner than this. But let me connect the dots here. In verses 1, 2, and 5, we've read 1 through 5. We've read 1 and 2, Judah, he sees this daughter. Now, apparently, when he gets back, he is not happy, maybe with his brethren. They have sold Joseph, and it was his suggestion to do that. But I think maybe in just a little bit of carelessness on his part, what does he do? He goes down and he turns into a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira, and he sees there whose name was Hira. That's a friend that he. Okay, did I say? Well, in verse 2, we find Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went into her. And she conceived and bare a son and called his name Onan. Now I'm going to stop right there and try to fill in some things right here. Pardon? Well, okay. I'm getting ahead of myself again. He goes into her, and he called his name Now, he possibly made friends with this one, this Hira, and he's there in Canaanite territory now, and he sees this woman, and he goes in. And keep in mind, unlike his father Jacob, he wasn't in Haran where he could find him a wife outside of that country. I mean, in that country. Plus, the woman, probably the women, I should say, were few to choose from. I can't get over how many, I'm not down there yet, but how many tried to make Tamar a Canaanite woman. I don't know how many I've read after that says that she was a Canaanite. The Bible doesn't say that, and so I'm not going to say that either. But he meets this Canaanite. Now, help me out here. Where did the Canaanites come from? I'm taking you back to where we started out. Well, let me ask this. The children of Israel, where did they come from? What one of Noah's sons did they come out of? Shem. Come out of Shem. Where did the Canaanites come from? They came from one of Noah's sons, his grandson, the Canaanites. Who? Ham. Okay. Came from the son of Ham. Now, Ham people, remember, went down into Canaan. That's where Israel is going to come back and have to chase and rid all these people. But that's what they should have done when they come out of Egypt. But that was one of their sins that we're going to get to see. But that's where Ham's ancestors, and is believed that these were the colored people, the Hamites, and they were a wicked bunch of people. And not only was they wicked, they were immoral, very, very immoral. And Judah goes, and that's who he sees. He hooks up with one of these women. And I want you to see this. He goes into her and has a son. She has a son by him and names his name in verse 3. It doesn't say that they got married. Like Samson, he saw a woman and he took her. Now, I want you to note that it was Judah that called him His name means watcher. Now, I don't know why I couldn't. I've tried to find out. I do know that that's what the name means, watcher. Now, what connection that has, I don't know. But she conceives again and bears a second son, and she calls his name Onan. She called his name Onan. If you'll notice the reading here, she conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Onah, which means strong. And again, I can't relate these names, their meanings to anything special, but I just looking it up. And when I get down to she yet again, verse 5, conceives and bears a son and calls his name Shelah. And he was at Kazib when she bare him. So they moved from there in their place in Canaan and moved down to this place called Kashib, a small town near Adullam, and she birthed the third son, Shelah. Now, what is going wrong here? Verse 6, and Judah took a wife for his name, or his firstborn, whose name, he took Judah a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. Now, again, the books that I've read all say that she was a Canaanite. I find it strange that when it mentions this Shelah, it makes sure that it's pointed out here that she was a Canaanite. And I'm going to give you my reasoning in this, and I have found nobody that has this same conception of this. But I don't know that when we see the end of this, whether I'm trying to read something between the lines or not. But it doesn't say she was a Canaanite. As a matter of fact, just because they were in the land of Canaan. Somebody help me here. Where else could they have gotten a daughter? Was the Canaanites the only ones there? Well, let's just think. What about Abraham's first son? He had children. And could he not have had some daughters? I'm sure that he did. Were they that close? I don't know. But what about Esau? Didn't he have some children? And could he not have had some daughters? I find it strange that the Bible is silent. Nothing is said about what Tamar's nationality is. Whether it's that, well, apparently it's not that important, or we would have found. But he takes Judah. Maybe this is my reasoning anyway. As we come to verse 6 and question, did Judah realize by this time that he had made a mistake in choosing the wrong woman for himself, and thus for perhaps maybe he got a little bit more on the right side and picked out a woman for that would have fit more. Would have been a half-breed. You see, he'd been half Israel and half Canaanite. Now, he goes, we bring on Tamar here. Nothing is said of her background, but by what is not mentioned, I just feel like we may assume that she may have been qualified for this to write this situation. Keep in mind that Shua here was still in the equation. Her children were, anyway. Now, Judah, he made the necessary arrangements, and was married to Tamar, this woman that we're going to see much of now. He was probably still a young man. Now, why would I say that? We got the framework here. Remember, Joseph was 17. When he takes over the throne, he's 30. But we're not there yet. We've got to fit into the 22 years that we're going to find here. And you've got 22. He's 13 or 17 when they sold him, and when they get down there when he meets up with his brothers again, he's 30 years of age, or he's 32 years of age. So you take 10 years off that. So you've got 22 years to work with here. That means that Judah has got to get married. He's got to, he gets married. He doesn't say he gets married, but right off he has 3 children, 1, 2, and 3. Could not have possibly been more than 17 years old, if my thing, maybe 18. Because you've got to leave some time here now. In 22 years, we've got to fit some things in here. Possibly he was we'll say he's 18 years old. His brother may have been 17 years old, and or younger. And when he moves down to their new station now, Sheila is born. We know this. Let's think this through. What I'm trying to say here that was still a young man, probably. He couldn't have been very old, but he was possibly very young. And we don't know the sin that he committed to deserve a divine judgment. We have no clue. We're not told. I know there's some imaginations in some of the writings that I read after. Henry Morse, he says that possibly, he tries to figure out some sins he might have. We don't know. Whatever he done, it displeased God enough that God killed him. Before he had, just maybe, if you want my opinion, I was just thinking possibly Tamar wasn't the most beautiful woman. I don't know. And maybe felt like that he could do better and maybe went out with some other women. We don't know what God killed him for, but God took his life before he had any children. Yes. The Bible does say that he was wicked. Thank you, Gobby. He was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and God took his life. So what does God do? What do we find here? We do know what Onan did, but let me just read on here, and I'll read it, and then we'll discuss further. Verse 8, and Judah said to Onan, "Go in to thy brother's wife and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother." And Onan knew that the seed should not be his, and it came to pass that he went in to his brother's wife. Now I want to do something right here. I want to turn you over to why would I read one place where it said it was they was under law to do this. The law hadn't been given yet. Moses is not around yet, so we don't have a law. But here's what. Go with me to the 25th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 25. Now here's what the law says, and perhaps this was an early custom. This is what I'm thinking. Chapter 25 of Deuteronomy. If there be a controversy between men, and they come into judgment, that the judges may judge them, then they shall justify the righteous and condemn the wicked. And it shall be, if the wicked man be worthy to be beaten, and it talks here about giving him no more, verse 3, no more than 39 stripes, 40 stripes. And verse 5 says, if brethren dwell together, and one of them die, and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall receive or succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. Why is this so important? Can anybody think with me on this? What is God doing here? He's preserving the bloodline. We got to be careful. The Israelites, they were to marry what? They were to marry Israelites. They were to marry in their own kin. And it was wrong for them to go outside this. Now, we're going to have to talk a little bit about this before we go on. But go on down to verse 9 in Deuteronomy 25. Then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders, and loose his shoes from off his feet. Now, if he refuses, they take his shoe off from his foot, and spit in his face. Can we think of an instant that this took place that we read about? Randy's really putting his thinking cap on here. What about Ruth and Boaz? Remember when Ruth said, when she laid down at Boaz's feet, and again, I was reading a book that tried to make something dirty and filthy out of that, and there wasn't nothing dirty about that. She done what she should have done, and Boaz, when he come back from his drunken stupor that he was in, I believe he got drunk, laid down, and when he woke up, when he come to himself, he found this woman at his feet, and she, there was a contract there between her and him, and he said, wait just a moment. There's one closer than me that we must consult here. And this is where the kinsman redeemer comes in. And he went to the one that was closer, and he refused to take Ruth because it would do what? It would mar his inheritance. And so what did he do? He had to come to the gate with the elders there and take off his shoe, and they come up and spit in his face. In other words, it was a disgrace. For the bloodline means so much here. Yeah. Well, but anyway, you see, look, verse 10, it says in 25, and his name shall be called in Israel the house of him who hath his shoes loosed. So, whether this was something, a custom that was carried on, but it was being practiced right here. Onan had to go in to his brother's wife, and he didn't want to. Again, maybe she wasn't that pretty. I don't know. We're not told. Judah is the one that picked her out. But notice, and let me just go ahead and finish this, that he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. Then said Judah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow at thy father's house till Shelah my son be grown, for he said, lest peradventure he die also, as his brother did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house, which she probably wasn't that excited about doing. Now, this plot gets even more thicker here as we go on. I want you to, next we read of Judah's third son in verses 11 through 12. And Judah had lost his second son, remember? And he comes now now Sheila comes into view here. But Judah, he's lost two sons, and maybe he's just thinking like this, I'm not going to lose the third son, so I'm not going to give her to him or him to her. So Tamar, she goes home. She'd wait for Sheila. He probably is a little underage. Let's just put him back to 12 years of age or 11 years. And she had to wait. And she waited. We still got that 22 years to fit ourselves into here. The next thing that happened was that Judah's wife, Shula, died, verses 12 and 13. And in the process of time, the daughter of Shula, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted and went into unto his sheep shearers to Timnath, and his friend Hira will bring him back in, the Adullamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And so she puts off her widow garments from her and covers her with a veil and wrapped herself and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath, for she saw that Sheila was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. I read one commentary said that she was set up to either take Sheila or Judah. She wasn't looking at Sheila. She was looking at Judah. And this was all planned by her, and a good plan at that. And when Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot. Again, some of the commentaries I read says that she was a temple prostitute, or she dressed like a temple prostitute. We're not told that. She just covered her face, and that's why the harlots did. But it was even a bad thing. But remember where they're at. They're in Canaan. And those people had no morals. So she covers herself. And when Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. Doesn't this tell us some disgusting things about this man Judah? I don't care if his wife did die. What we see here is nothing but corruption on his part. And she said, What wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? So now we find a bargain was made in verses 17 down to 20. I see in this Satan setting up the whole situation and laughing his head off right now. He thought, boy, that promise that God made to Abraham back in 1818, I'm talking about Genesis 18:18 now, that promise is sure going awry. Judah's running out of, there's these three sons, two of them dead. Sheila's still alive, but he don't want her, he don't want to send him into her. And so the bloodline was going to stop right there. No bloodline. Because it had to come through or if not Onan, because he's going to take Er's place. And Sheila wasn't going to be given, so no bloodline, and so it stopped right here. And sometimes Satan outfoxes himself. And here's one place he did. Judah goes in to Tamar. And verse 17, he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. Now, he's not talking about a kid like we talk about a kid. He didn't know he was going to get kids, but he said, I'll send you a goat for payment. That was the agreement. And she said, wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? I don't know. She may have been a very beautiful woman, but if she was a bad-looking woman, I'll say this for her, she had a brain. She had a head, and she's using it. I want a pledge. And he said to her, verse 18, what pledge shall I give thee? And she said, thy signet, and thy bracelets, and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it her, thinking, well, this is going to be a loan. I'll get it when I get the kid down here. And come in unto her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away, and laid by her veil, that is the harlot veil, and put her on the garments of widowhood, put her widowhood back on. Then he asked the men Judah in verse 20 sent the kid by the hand of the Adullamite. That's his friend that I keep getting mixed up here, Hira, sent it down by him, and he asked the men of that place, where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, there was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, well, let her take it to her, let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Isn't that something? Here's this immoral man now, Judah, worried about being shamed, getting a bad name, at least tried to make payment. Excuse me, I find this disgusting. And Judah said, let her take it. And it came to pass about 3 months, and it gets worse. After that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar thy daughter-in-law hath played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child of whoredom. And Judah said, bring her forth, and let her be thrown into the fire. Burn her up. Isn't that just like some men? I say that with a lot of disgust for manhood. Let me just say here, shocking news that came to him in these verses. Many things can be brought out right here, and I want to just touch upon a couple of them. With Judah, can we not see a double standard here? Was it right for him and wrong for her? He was guilty as she was. Why in the world is he wanting to burn her? Wasn't he guilty? Did that bother him any at all that he was going into a parlor with a harlot? Well, he's ready to have Tamar burned to death. How quickly? And I see this all the time. We can set ourselves up as judge and jury for somebody else that we're just as guilty of ourselves. We got good eyesight to see, boy, he shouldn't have done that. She shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done that. And then maybe we're just as guilty in some other area as what they are. And this was certainly true with Judah. I hope that we can see how dangerous it is to live an unseparated life in Canaan. And you get just like them. You see, Judah was down there where he shouldn't have been to begin with. He left his homeland, went down to Canaan. And he's there with these ungodly people. Now, did God approve of what was done here? And the answer is absolutely not. God does never approve sin. But God does override, and he will work out his plan regardless. And we're going to see this. We can see right here the reason that God sends Joseph into Egypt. Why did Joseph have to go down into Egypt? To get God's people, this family, out of this corruption where they're at, so they can take them down there and grow them into a nation, to bring them out large enough and big enough to go back into Canaan and wipe them out. That was what it was all about. God's working here. We can see right here the reason that God sends Joseph down. Now, you might wonder why this chapter is even in the Bible. I don't have any problem with that. Matter of fact, I like to see what's going on. God is letting us see what he thinks of sin, number one, but he's also showing how that God removes his people from this way of life. It was corruption. And the more that they lived there, the worse it was going to get. So Judah was going to have Tamar put to the fire, verse 24. But when she showed him who the father was and who she had been with, man, he was stumped, wasn't he? He had to change his mind. But verse 26, I want you to see this. And Judah acknowledged them and said, when she showed him the things that he had given her, the pledge until the kid came, she had been more righteous than I. Judah finally sees his mistake. Now, the Bible says, and he knew her again no more. I went over into the book of Joshua, or Judges, I think it was, this afternoon. And I seen, no, in the book of Numbers. In the book of Numbers is brought out. Judah had 4 sons. 2 of them died, and only 2 of them went on. Shelah, and I wish I could remember the chapter in Judges where that's at. But Shelah became the head over, I forget what the people are. But then there was, well, let me just point this out. Did Tamar have a baby? she had 2 babies. 2 babies. And I want you, before I quit here, you've got to see this. It does not end here. And this is what's good. It's just getting started, actually. Tamar does not have a baby. She has babies, 2 of them, twins. Verse 27, and it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass when she travailed that one put out his hand, and the midwife, think about this now, took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread. what'd she do here? She tied what on his hand? Huh? A scar. The hand came out, and she tied a scarlet. What is scarlet? A red thread around his hand. Hand went back in. And the other baby came out first. The other baby, Perez. Now, let's read on here. But wait a minute, before we go there. Well, no, I don't want to get that yet. I want to bring it into you. I hope I don't forget it. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out, and she said, How hast thou broken forth? Therefore his name shall be called Pharez, breaking through. That's what the name means. Who else was, I wish Pat was here because we get into a good discussion on this. The second became the first. That happened with Jacob and Esau. Esau was born first. And what was the characteristic, or what was it that stood out about Esau? Huh? Hairy man. What color hair? Red. See the connection here? Isn't it amazing what little nuggets you can find when you get looking? He come out very red, but he came out first. But Jacob was brought around him, and we know the story there. We've already been through that. But now let's go on. Therefore his name, the second, then this breach come upon me. Therefore his name was called Pharez. He was the second one come out. And after came forth his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah, which it means rising. And I don't know again what the meaning of these names are. So she had babies. The midwife attending to the birth, she saw that hand. She tied the thread around it. By the way, well, here again, I'm trying to jump ahead of myself. Don, stay intact here. She tied the thread around, but his hand drew back, and his brother was born first, and she called his name Perez, breaking through. Then his brother came out, was named Zerah, rising. 4 women are listed in the genealogy of Christ. But before we go there, I want to turn to the book of Ruth. Will you turn there with me? I want you to see this. The book of Ruth. You go, Judges, Ruth, 1st, 2nd Samuel. Judges, and between Judges and 1st Samuel, you come to the little book of Ruth. Just 4 chapters, and I want to go to that 4th chapter and show you something here. It's very important. Verse 12 of chapter 4. Boaz and Ruth are now married, and they're going to have their first. Verse 12 says, chapter 4, and let thy house be like the house of Pharez. Who's that? The one we just got through reading about. That was born first from Tamar and Judah. Whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed for which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. Now let's turn on over down to verse 17. Save some time here. And the women, she's conceived, she's born a child, and the women gave it a name, saying, there is born a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. And now these are the generations. We go to Pharez, the one we just been reading about, just got born. Pharez begat Hezron. Hezron begat Ram. Ram begat Aminadab. Aminadab begat Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. Is that important? You better well believe it is. Now, could I ask this question? What was Tamar and Pharez to David? Great. You have to go back. Now let's go to Matthew chapter 1, and I'll bring this to a close. Matthew chapter 1. And I'll say again, this is also very important. Get into chapter 1 of Matthew. Let's look. The generations. We've been talking about the generations of Seth, the generations of Noah, the generations of Abraham, the generations of Isaac, the generation of Judah, or Jacob, rather. And now we're going to look at the generations of Jesus Christ. The son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob. And Jacob begat Judas and his brothers, all 11, his 11 brothers. But notice Judas is the one that's important here. And Judas begat Pharez and Zerah. Names are spelled a little bit different, but that's okay. We're going from Hebrew to Greek here, remember. And notice it's spelled out there, of Tamar. And Pharez begat Ezram. Ezram begat Aram. Aram begat Abinadab. Abinadab begat Nahshon. Nahshon begat Salmon. Salmon begat Boaz. Where have we read these names? The book of Ruth. Was it important that Boaz married Ruth? You better doggone well believe it was. Now, we come, Salmon begat Boaz of Rahab, and Boaz begat Obed of Ruth, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David the king, and David the king begat Solomon of who? Bathsheba. It doesn't name her here, but we know that of her that had been the wife of Uriah. Now, follow this. 4 women's names are listed in the genealogy of Jesus in these 6 verses. Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba. 4 women. Every one of them has got scars on them, haven't they? Tamar, was she a Canaanite? I don't know. What about Rahab? Some say she was a Canaanite. I don't know where they get these things. I don't find her to be that. She was where, when the children of Israel came in, where did she come from? Well, she didn't come from Israel because they're not there. When she comes, remember what happened? The story here, let me quickly give it to you. Joshua sent 2 spies out, says, you go over into Canaan, go over into this land, and I want you to spy it out, because we're going to go. And they crossed the Jordan River. Before they done that, the 2 spies went in, and somebody seen them. So they took refuge where? In the house of Rahab. Rahab, the harlot. That's what she's still called. You suppose when we get to heaven we're going to call her Rahab the harlot? I don't think so. I don't think so. But remember what she done, and this is what the Bible say. She hid these two spies up on the roof of her house. She covered them over with fodder or whatever they had up there, some vegetarian stuff, weed, something she put over them. And the men come looking in her house for them, and she said they were here, but they're gone. And as soon as the men left her house, she made them promise her that when Israel, and listen to what she said. She said, I know that you're going to come in with the history. She was well enough versed that she knew that they was going to conquer the land. You're going to come in. I want you to remember me when you come in. And so they made a tract with her, or a league with her, and they said, what was it? Can somebody tell me what they done? What she done? A scarlet what? Well, we said, but what's the Bible say? A scarlet thread. But I agree, it had to be a rope. It had to be more than a thread. But the Bible called it a thread. Remember the thread wrapped around the hand of Ziba? Now, we got red Esau, we got the red thread, we got now a red rope. And when they went in, because they promised her, you get behind that red thread or that red rope. You get behind it. Everybody in your house is going to be spared. Let me ask you this. What does this red, what's all this red about? The blood of Christ. Remember putting the blood on the lintels of the door and the headpost? It was red. When I see the blood, I will pass over you, and all that's in your house will save and spare. I asked Kyra this question the other night. She's been studying on it. I don't know where she got the answer or not. But let me just point this out to you. Ruth was what? Well, she was a Moabite. Okay, I see where you're coming from. Yes, she was a Moabite. And where did she come from? Where did the Moabites come from? Lot. In what way? From his daughter. Remember, he had two daughters by his own. He had two babies by his own daughters. One was an Ammonite. The other was a Moabite. That's where Ruth come from. Was it okay for Ruth to marry Boaz? Remember this. All four of these women, any way you look at it, if you'll be here Wednesday night, we'll talk about this when we get to the church, but all these women were not Jewish. Every one of them were Gentiles. I'm going to tell you this on Wednesday night. If you're not Jew, you're Gentile. Doesn't make any difference what. You're a Gentile. You're a German Gentile. We're an American Gentile, or whatever our ancestors was. But we're Gentiles. Every one of these women were Gentiles. Did I get all this in? It's remarkable that all four women were non-Jews who had been won by other witnesses to the true faith of Jehovah. Every one of these people we're going to find in heaven. We'll see Tamar there. We'll see Ruth, Bathsheba, and the one we just talked about. Tamar. Okay. Tamar was thought to be a Canaanite. I say this in my notes. Some say she was a Canaanite. I don't see where they get it. Rahab was a native of Jericho. She also is picked out to be a Canaanite. Ruth was also a Moabitess, and Bathsheba. Does anybody know what she was? We don't know, do we? The only thing we do know, she was married to a what? Uriah the Hittite. So it's suspected that she probably was a Hittite. Well, each one came into the family of Judah by morally dubious means. And